Welcome to Seeking History. You know, it's funny, the term Radio Shack, it wasn't always about a store. Did you know it originally meant the room on a ship, the one with all the radio gear?
Yeah, it's kind of wild how that very specific nautical term ended up on practically every main street in America for a while. It really marked a place that, well, it had a huge impact on American tech, on business, even just how we spend our free time.
Exactly. And that place was Radio Shack. I mean, for decades, it was just this landmark in American technology and culture, too. So today, on our journey into the past, we're going to dig into the story of Radio Shack. It all started way back, Boston, 1921.
Right, and we're really going to try and look at it from all angles. You know, the history, sure, but also the societal impact, the economics behind it, the business choices, and of course the technology itself, the waves they rode, and, well, the ones they kind of missed later on.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Those early days, 1921 up to about 62. How did it all get started?
Well, it was founded by two brothers, Theodore and Milton Deutschman, there in Boston, and their first focus was really narrow, actually. It was all about amateur radio, ham radio.
Ah, okay, so the name Radio Shack made perfect sense then.
Exactly. They were supplying the stuff for those Radio Shacks, whether they were on ships or, in someone's basement workshop.
So a really niche market to begin with. And they weren't just a shop people walked into, right? They sold things differently.
No, that's right. From the start, it was a myth. They had one actual store. The first one was at a 46 Brattle Street in Boston. But they also did a lot of mail order business, which was pretty forward-thinking, actually, reaching customers beyond just the local area.
Yeah, that mail order side must have been crucial for reaching those early tech fans who weren't necessarily near Boston.
Oh, absolutely. It let them connect with hobbyists, even some professionals, all over. Then, in 1939, they put out their first catalog. That was a big step. And it showed they were already thinking bigger, expanding into the high-fidelity music market, not just radios anymore.
A catalog in 39. Wow, that really paints a picture, doesn't it? A whole different way of shopping and discovering tech. And they had their own brands pretty early, too.
They did, yeah. In 54, they started selling stuff under their own label called Realist. But, they ran into a snag. There was a camera company, Stereo Realist, and, well, a lawsuit happened. So they had to change the name. That's how we eventually got Realist.
The little dramas behind the brand names. Okay, now, I think I read somewhere they picked up a nickname back then. Not exactly flattering.
Brief chuckle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some people called the stores Nagasaki Hardware. A bit harsh. It was because a lot of their stuff, especially early on, was sourced from Japan. And this was, post-World War II. And sometimes Japanese goods were seen as, well, maybe cheaper or lower quality back then. So it shows they had some image hurdles to overcome.
Interesting how that historical context just shapes everything. So, okay, early 60s, they've grown to 9 stores, plus the mail order.
Yeah.
But financially. Not so great.
Not great at all. Despite expanding, the company was really struggling. By the early 1960s, Radio Shack was basically almost bankrupt.
Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising given how they built that foundation.
Okay, so here's the big turning point, right?
Yeah.
Enter Charles D. Tandy. Tell us about him buying the company and just changing everything.
Right. 1963, Charles Tandy, his main business was Tandy Corporation, which was mostly leather goods, believe it or not. He saw something in Radio Shack, even though it was failing, bought the whole nearly bankrupt company for just $300,000.
From leather goods to electronics. That's quite a jump. What made him think he could turn it around? Was it just a different vision?
That's a good question. I think it was partly vision, partly just solid business strategy. His approach was a total reset. He decided, okay, let's forget trying to be everything to everyone. Let's focus hard on the hobbyists, the DIY electronics people.
Okay.
And he went for small stores. Lots of them. Easy to get to, like in strip malls. Not giant destination stores.
Makes sense. Lower overhead, more convenience.
Exactly. And, crucially, he pushed hard on private label brands. Realistic, Archer, Micronta later on. Better profit margins, that was too.
Right. Control the brand, control the profit. Smart.
And he slashed the inventory. They apparently had something like 40,000 different items. He cut it down to about 2,500.
Wow, that's a huge cut.
Yeah, focus on what sells. And he really pushed the idea of knowledgeable staff. You know that famous slogan, "You've got questions, we've got answers."
Oh, yeah, everyone knew that slogan. It really worked. Made them seem like the place to go if you were stuck on a project.
It positioned them as more than just a store. It was like a resource. You could get help there.
And under Tandy, the growth was just insane, wasn't it?
Unbelievable. By 1988, they had over 7,000 stores, 7,000. They were just everywhere. That accessibility was huge. And those private brands Realistic for audio, Archer for all the little components, Micronta for test gear. They became household names for anyone tinkering with electronics.
And then, 1977, the TRS-80 Model Y. That feels like another massive moment. What was so special about the Trash 80?
Oh, it was huge. The TRS-80, yeah, the nickname stuck, Trash 80, but it was one of the very first mass-produced personal computers. And the key things were, one, the price, $599, which was pretty affordable for the time. And two, it was basically ready to go out of the box. Keyboard, monitor.
Right, not just a kit you had to assemble entirely yourself.
Exactly. It came with the basic programming language, too, so people could actually start writing their own simple programs. It made computing accessible. They sold over 200,000 of them, which is just enormous back then. It showed RadioShack could actually lead in new tech, not just sell parts.
It's amazing, really.
Yeah.
A company built on radio parts becoming a PC pioneer. And let's not forget the whole CB radio thing in the 70s.
Yeah.
They rode that wave hard.
Oh, definitely. The CB craze was a massive cultural moment, and RadioShack was right in the thick of it. At one point, CBs were making up almost 30% of their total revenue. Think about that. Models like the Realistic Navajo, the Patrolman, they were everywhere.
Yeah, it shows how they could tap into those big trends.
Absolutely. They were very good at that for a long time.
And the Battery of the Month Club, I always thought that was just brilliant marketing. So simple.
It really was a free battery every month. What did that do? It got people into the store regularly.
Right. And once you're in the door,
You probably buy something else, a connector, some wire, maybe browse the new gadgets. It kept that connection going. Really clever.
so by the early 90s, they weren't just selling computers. They were the world's largest manufacturer of them, even making them for other brands.
Yeah, it's kind of staggering. They were incredibly vertically integrated. They made everything, not just the electronics, but like the store fixtures, the software that ran on their computers, the wire, the antennas, almost everything.
Wow. So way more than just a retailer, a manufacturing giant, too.
Definitely. Gave them huge control over costs and quality.
Okay, let's shift a bit to the cultural side, because RadioShack was more than just a store for a lot of people, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Take the catalog, for instance, the RadioShack catalog.
Yeah.
It was iconic for generations of kids and adults, too. It wasn't just for shopping. It was like an encyclopedia of possibilities, an educational tool almost.
I remember just flipping through those pages for hours, dreaming about projects.
Me too. Seeing all those components and kits, it sparked so much curiosity. Did you ever build one of those project kits?
Oh, yeah, the 101 electronic project kit with the springs. That was like a rite of passage if you were into electronics back then.
Totally. Those kits were amazing. They taught the basics of circuits to so many people in a really hands-on way. And they were involved in the community, too, right? Sponsoring Little League teams, local events that helped make them part of the landscape.
Yeah, they felt very present, not just a faceless chain.
And thinking about tech, they were early with wireless stuff, too, even before cell phones really took off. Things like the Realistic Patrolman scanner, listening in on police bands.
Oh, yeah, scanners were cool. And those early cordless phones. Bulky things.
Uh-huh. They were often among the first to bring those kinds of emerging technologies to a mass market. And we have to mention the Realistic Flavor Radio, that little colorful AM radio.
The Flavor Radio, yes. That thing was sold forever, wasn't it?
From 1972 all the way to 2000. And yeah, it came in all those bright colors, just a simple, fun little gadget, almost nostalgic now.
Definitely.
And for the more serious folks, you had the Science Fair P-Box kits, the solderless breadboards.
Oh, the breadboards were essential.
And those little engineer's mini notebooks by Forrest Mims. Those were gold if you were actually designing circuits.
Absolutely. Packed with info.
Yeah.
And remember the Realistic Sound Level Meter, the analog one?
Yeah. That's funny. It was meant for audio hobbyists, right?
Yeah.
Setting up your stereo.
Right. But apparently it got used way beyond that, like in factories for noise checks, all sorts of things.
Huh. Shows how sometimes tools find uses you never expected.
So, okay, for decades, RadioShack is this huge dominant force, culturally important, technologically relevant. But then the mid-90s hit, and things started to go wrong. What happened?
Yeah, it's kind of a confluence of factors, really. Several big shifts started happening around then. One of the biggest probably was just they were slow, really slow to adapt to the rise of e-commerce.
Right. The internet was taking off, but they were still mostly brick-and-mortar focused.
Exactly. While Amazon and others were starting up, offering huge selection online, often cheaper, RadioShack just didn't really embrace online sales effectively, especially not early on.
And at the same time, the big box stores were booming.
Yeah, Best Buy, Circuit City back then, even Walmart getting bigger into electronics, they offered a much wider range of products, often at lower prices because of their scale.
Mm-hmm.
Radio Shack's small stores and maybe higher margins made it hard to compete purely on price for TVs or VCRs.
And those big stores were kind of one-stop shops, too. You could get your TV, your groceries, whatever. Made a dedicated electronics store maybe feel less essential.
That was part of it, too. And then there was a shift in Radio Shack's own strategy. They started moving away from their core, the components, the hobbyist stuff that built the brand, towards more mainstream consumer electronics, and especially mobile phones. Wireless became a huge focus.
Okay, following the market, I guess. But that had downsides.
Big time. For one, profit margins on selling someone else's phone were way lower than selling their own real estate brand components. And it kind of alienated some of their old school loyal customers, the tinkerers, the builders. The stuff they came for was harder to find or gone.
Yeah, I remember hearing they even started discontinuing brands like Realistic and Optimus.
Right.
That must have felt like a betrayal to some fans.
It definitely signaled a change. This wasn't quite the same Radio Shack anymore.
And didn't they try some big, flashy new store concepts that didn't quite work out?
Yes, the Incredible Universe stores, huge mega stores. Kind of like a competitor to Best Buy, but maybe too big, too ambitious. Most of them apparently lost money, and they eventually shut them down or sold them off. It showed that expanding outside their niche was risky.
And the focus on mobile phones. But that ended up biting them too, didn't it?
It did. They became really reliant on those sales. But then the phone carriers like AT&T and Verizon started cutting back on the subsidies they paid retailers for signing up customers.
So the profit on each phone sale dropped.
Exactly. And Radio Shack hadn't really built up other strong areas to compensate. And like you said, their online sales, especially for components, were still lagging.
That's like internal problems were brewing too. Yeah. Management issues.
Yeah. Reports from that time mention a lot of CEO turnover, kind of a revolving door at the top. That makes consistent strategy difficult,
Sure does.
And sadly, customer service reputation seemed to slip as well during those years, which was tough because that "we've got answers" idea had been so central. All of this just added up. Financial losses started piling up. Debt grew. It wasn't looking good.
I remember hearing about something called Fix 1500. That sounds ominous.
It does, yeah. It was some kind of internal initiative aimed at improving profitability in underperforming stores, I think. But word is, it put a lot of pressure on store managers, maybe hurt morale, just more disruption internally when they really needed stability.
And then they tried rebranding.
Yeah.
Calling themselves The Shack.
Size slightly, yeah. That didn't really land well, did it? It felt, I don't know, kind of forced. Trying maybe too hard to be cool and distance themselves from their own history.
Yeah, maybe leaning into the history would have been better. So all these problems, it led to the inevitable, I guess. Bankruptcy. Chapter 11 in 2015.
Yes. February 2015, that was the first big one. Led to a lot of store closures and the sale of a chunk of the remaining stores and the brand name to a company called General Wireless. They partnered with Sprint, trying that store within a store idea.
Right, the Sprint partnership. But that wasn't enough to save it either.
No, unfortunately not. And there was that controversy during the bankruptcy. They tried to sell customer data.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. That caused a big backlash. People felt betrayed, given privacy promises.
Absolutely. Didn't help their image at all. And then just 2 years later, March 2017, General Wireless itself filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy.
Wow. So a second bankruptcy.
Yeah. That led to even more store closures, liquidations. It really felt like, okay, this might be the actual end of Radio Shack as a physical presence.
Of the name.
Yeah.
The brand. It didn't just disappear completely, did it?
No. It's had a strange afterlife, actually. The brand and the intellectual property got bought by Kensington Capital Holdings in 2017. Then, in November 2020, another company, Retail E-commerce Ventures RV, bought it. Their plan was mainly to relaunch it as an online store.
Okay, so moving entirely online.
Mostly. And then there was that really weird, brief detour into cryptocurrency. RadioShack DeFi.
Yuggles. Yeah, that popped up on Twitter, didn't it? Very unexpected.
Very unexpected and kind of controversial, too. Didn't last long, I don't think.
So what's the absolute latest? Where does RadioShack stand today?
Well, in 2023, yet another company, Unicomer Group, acquired the global IP. They've relaunched the e-commerce site again. So today, Radio Shack exists primarily as an online retailer. There are still a few apparently independently owned stores that use the name, but the giant chain of company-owned stores, that's gone.
What a ride. I mean, from a tiny Boston shop for radio hams to this global giant shaping tech access and then this long decline and now this online afterlife.
It's an incredible story. It really mirrors so many of the huge shifts in technology in retail and society over the last 100 years.
Yeah, it really makes you think about innovation, about adapting or failing to adapt, and just how people connect with technology.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a case study in so many ways. Business strategy, cultural impact, technological disruption.
Yeah.
It's all there.
So, reflecting on all this, what does the rise and, well, the fall and transformation of Radio Shack really tell us about where retail might be heading in our super digital world? Or maybe. How did Radio Shack genuinely shape how we first learned about and played with tech? And is there any way that kind of legacy, that spirit of accessible tinkering, could even be reclaimed today? Something to ponder.
Definitely food for thought. Thanks for diving into this history with me. It's quite a story.